investors believe that though we think our financial services sector is developed, it's still at an infancy stage, and they believe it bodes a lot of growth opportunities. So that's one sector that's been of great interest to investors. I think other sectors that are investors are beginning to show interest in consumer goods. Of course, you can never take away the fact that Nigeria's performance in global competitive index is basically hinged on the size of our market. And because we have a huge population, 180 million mouths to feed, whatever that individuals in Nigeria consume, 10% of Nigerians consume is 80 million consumers you have. 20% is 36 million consumers. So the consumer goods sector have always continued to be of interest to both local and foreign direct investors.
In terms of what we think this administration should do when we look at the state of the financial services industry, because whether we produce as much oil or we do agriculture, at the end of it all, Broad Street is still the center of it all. Whether you are moving this into, because you need to move agriculture into a formal sector, which is financial services, you need money from the Bank of Industry, or you need funds from the Bank of Agriculture, or you need from regular bank, or you want to buy into listed companies, even unlisted ones. So how much of this GDP would you want the government to do to improve the strength of the financial services as the basic anchor for the entire economy?
Well, one of the things the government should do is to address the challenges in the banking industry. You see, we are shying away from addressing the challenges in the banking industry. We know there's a challenge. You have a non-performing loan portfolio of 14% of the loan portfolio of banks. That is quite high compared to the 5% threshold. So you find out that, look, we have a set of financial institutions that some are not in very robust health. So we need to address that. We need to conclusively address the issue of weaknesses among some of the operators in the financial services industry. And why am I particular about this? That without intermediation, the ability to spread weight is highly constrained. And that is why in most economic environments, where there's an economic crisis, the government has the solution to the problem by addressing the financial services industry, restoring their health, so that they be in a position to play the intermediation road, to be able to pass resources from the surplus units to the deficit units. Today, we are seeing a large percentage of government intervention in providing funding to the risk sector, because a lot of funding are not going through the conventional banks. So we need to address that. When Bismarck was speaking, he talked about the interest rates. We've seen a situation where government borrowing has crowded out the private sector in accessing credit. And it's commonsensical that if I can give money to the government at 22% or 21%, which is risk-free investment, why would I give money to a business operator, even at 30%, because there's a risk of default, particularly in an environment where I'm seeing non-performing loan averaging about 14% of the total loan portfolio. So we need to address the issue of the level of non-performing loans. They have toyed with the idea of second AMCON, but we just have to by the bullet. We need to address that conclusively. So we strengthen the financial services industry to be in a position to play effectively a role of intermediation.
This second quarter GDP will be a major talking point or consideration for members of the Monetary Policy Committee when they meet in about 2 weeks' time for the September meeting, second to the last in 2017 of the Central Bank. What part of this report do you think should guide the MPC moving forward in terms of whether we're tinkering with the CRR, whether we're leaving the liquidity ratio, what we're doing with the MPR?
Well, we start from the issue of liquidity. I mentioned that the government has been crowding out the private sector. And today, the GDP print came at 0.55%, positive. But we all know that will not have material impact on the welfare and well-being of citizens. Because just like BJ said, you need to grow the GDP at a rate is higher than population growth rate. Otherwise, if you continue to grow at below the population growth rate, the incidence of poverty will continue to increase. So we need to address how do we encourage the private sector to grow. If you look at the sector that grew in the second quarter, agriculture came at 3%. We saw the oil and gas sector material improvement. But the one I actually want to interrogate further is the power sector growth. We saw a 35% growth in the power sector. And the question I ask is this: in terms of energy power generation, we are still about the same level. We've been about 3,600, 3,700 since the beginning of this year. So the growth we saw in the energy sector did not come from the national grid.
So where did it come from?
It must be coming from the household generations. The price of diesel has gone down. So you find out, because when you are talking of power generation, you are talking inclusive the household generations. So in effect, you are talking of that the industrial outlets, the industrial entities are now in a position to access diesel at lower cost and run their generation activities. Maybe there was improvement in gas supply, which would mean that those companies that are along the gas line that are getting gas supply from either NGC or any of the gas companies may have improved power generation. But the most important is not coming from the national grid. So we need to address the issue of power supply from the national grid if we need to improve productive activities at the small and medium scale entrepreneurial level, which is critical for job creation in the country.
What's your outlook on the rest of the year? We're going to wrap it up again. Fitch report came out on Friday and says we're looking at 1.5% GDP growth for the full year. That was the latest one we had from Fitch. Do you agree with that? What's your number? I'm taking a sample here.
Well, I think we'll be the lower 1 point something percent, maybe 1.2, 1.3%, but in that range of 1% to 1.5%. If we continue with the right policies, if we continue with the growth we've seen in the oil and gas sector. The reason why oil and gas sector is very critical because it has a pervasive effect on the other sector, the trade sector, the manufacturing sector, because of access to forex.
Yeah, so we're still tied to that.
So we're still
tied to that.
With the right policies, we should be able to grow at that 1 to 1.5% range.
All right, thank you very much. Quite a number of viewers are reacting to some of your comments there about whether this 0.55% GDP in Q2 will not have material positive impact on the life of Nigerians yet.
Yeah, it's not going to be material.
For some folks, it's not really true. But again, let's get on social media later and talk about that. Johnson Chukwu, Chief Executive Officer and Head of Trading at Carry Asset Management. We're back after the break, and we're looking at consumer goods within the new GDP numbers.